We live in a co-creative reality. It's not a prison. It's only a prison if we turn it into one. Through our agreement and what we manifest through our consciousness. We're going to go into a bit of a rabbit hole today because I'm going to continue off from the video I posted yesterday. We are not one. What I have to say, though, is going to apply whether you disagree or agree with what I said in that video. When you look up at the night sky, all of those stars, I think that when Crowley said that every man and woman is a star, that was a lot more literal than most people take it. And when we're talking about mythology, where entire realms are made out of the flesh of gods, I also think that is more literal than a lot of people take it. You've got Erebus, who is the god of darkness. And then you have Nyx, who is the goddess of the night. So when you look up, you see darkness and then you see the night sky nestled within it. And then you see all of those stars dotting the sky above us. If you draw the lines between all of those stars, what you get is the grid or the matrix upon which this reality manifests. And this also ties into the nature of incarnate deities. People, when they start thinking in terms of incarnate deities, they're thinking in terms of, I am an incarnation of whatever spirit is popular right now. I'm an incarnation of one of the sexy spirits. The truth is that we are all incarnate deities in our own right. It's just a question of whether or not you are one of these big name spirits or if you are the equivalent of Ted from accounting. And there's nothing wrong with being Ted from accounting. I think people get too wrapped up in the theatrics when they examine the nature of these spirits. Look at some of the more revered spirits like Lucifuge Rofocal among infernal spirits, who, for all of his grand descriptors, he is essentially a lawyer. And there's nothing wrong with being a lawyer. But he has a very practical, real-world sort of corollary to the role that a lot of us play in this world. And when we're looking at the stars, what we're seeing is not... when I look up, I'm not seeing my higher self there. What I'm seeing is my oversoul, if I can point it out. And there's going to be thousands, if not millions, of beings that come from it. So what most people are referring to as the Matrix is a false overlay that gets put on realms like this. And I don't think that it's a static overlay. I think that when you have parasitic beings come in that want to turn a world into a battery, it takes shape around the world that you're in. And they periodically get banished, defeated, or destroyed. And something else comes in to try and do that same thing. It's one of the processes of evolution. We have psychopaths in this world right now. And as much as we hate psychopaths, and as much as that hatred is warranted, psychopaths serve a purpose in the grander scheme of things in terms of expanding our consciousness and furthering our evolution. First and foremost, by requiring courage, honesty, and passion to be able to counter them and to banish them from positions of power, to expose them for what they are, and to hold your ground centered in your own reality when they try to gaslight you into buying into theirs. So you will never hear me talk about ascension. You will never hear me talk about escaping the Matrix. I'm not even sure what that's supposed to mean. I think most of the time, what that boils down to is people trying to escape themselves. Because if you're responsible for yourself, if you are embodying your own creative power, then your individuated role in the world that we're living in becomes clear. And it doesn't mean that you have this almighty power to change everything that you don't like. I don't actually believe that someone who is at the very apex of their spiritual development will never have bad times, will never suffer poverty, and so on, etc., at least in material terms. I do think that someone who has attained a high level of spiritual adepthood, they will be at peace and they will be joyful even in the midst of circumstances that would be crushing to someone who hasn't gone as far in their journey as they have. There are men and women right now who are on their way to the gallows, who are at peace, and they're even enjoying themselves because what they have done in life is the truest expression of their soul's desire, of their soul's will. And when the day comes that they die, they're going to go completely at peace. Whereas there are people waiting for their DoorDash delivery in a comfortable life with plenty of money in the bank who are depressed and lost and confused. They have no idea who they are, and nothing seems to satisfy them. I think that in pursuing ascent, in pursuing breaking out of the matrix, what we end up doing is we give up our vote to the parasites who have convinced us that this place is nothing but a prison, and that the natural world, the natural universe, has not arisen from a multitude of energies colliding and deciding to engage in an act of sacred co-creation and expansion of consciousness through shared experiences, but it is instead something that has been afflicted upon us by a sadist. And because of how consciousness works, when we internalize that perspective, we end up feeding into that model of reality. Truth is very quiet. And by extension, the inevitable speaks for itself. Nobody is out there shouting from the mountaintops that if you throw something into the air, that is going to drop to the ground. They would be seen as insane, not because what they're saying is wrong, but because it is so obvious that to be a fanatic about it, there'd have to be something wrong with you. So keep this in mind whenever you're seeing somebody being very loud about something. Like, for example, digital ID and the ever-present surveillance state. There are very real concerns there. I don't advocate that anybody just hide under a rock and pretend that stuff doesn't exist or that it's not happening. But there is this propaganda being pushed day in and day out from a variety of different sources that is essentially along the lines of, this is inevitable, get used to it because there's nothing you can do about it. But if that was the case, and if the people implementing it were confident, they wouldn't be saying a word. There wouldn't be propaganda. There wouldn't be all this doomerism, and there wouldn't be so much reporting trying to acclimate people to it. And even if it is inevitable, you don't have to let that take your joy. What most people are thinking of as the Matrix, as a prison, it begins in the mind. And if you're not imprisoned within your mind, any position you find yourself in can become a playground. And if you can be free in circumstances where other people are not, that's what real adepthood looks like. If there is anything to the idea of ascent, you don't achieve it by striving to ensure that you never incarnate in this world again. You achieve it by getting to the point where you don't care, because you will manifest your joy and you will live your soul's will, no matter who you are, no matter what time you live in, and no matter what society you find yourself within. So what I would advocate for people to do, stop trying to escape the matrix and start focusing on how you can have fun with it.